Hey guys, how's it going? Today I wanted to speak about the subject of when does human consciousness begin? Well, I think it really begins with you being conscious about being able to have this conversation. You being able to understand that you are alive. You looking at yourself in a mirror and knowing that it's you. But just also acknowledging the fact that within life there's love and there's people you care about and there's things you like to do, things you don't like to do. And a lot of times they say that animals are not conscious or that they just are and don't really feel. But I could easily debate that that's wrong, because if they lose a child, like a dog would lose a puppy or something like that, they become sad. If you leave the house, they become sad. They become happy. And you're going to say, oh, well, it's just the little emotion that they feel at that time. But I think they are very aware and conscious of the fact that they are living beings, that they are part of a family. And maybe they don't speak the words that we speak, but they have a consciousness of their own. And it's also been said, for example, very recently, that even trees and plants and all that have a consciousness. If there's a fire or if plants are sick in one area or the other, for some reason there's a way that they are able to communicate within their whole network, and they actually have some sort of defense mechanism that comes in, and you can see it in the secretion of their material inside their bark, and you can see it in the bark of the tree, and you can see it in the way that maybe the fruit won't develop in the same way, or maybe you'll see it in the way that the leaves fall all of a sudden or they don't fall. So you're really going to be able to see at that time that a plant, even in itself, you don't really talk to it and stuff like that, but maybe in some way they have a way of communicating too. And they've done many tests, and even if you look at shows like Mythbusters and stuff like that, where they start screaming at the plant and all that, they've kind of shown in some way that different pitches, different tones will actually affect the plant in one way or the other. Of course, in that Mythbuster scenario, the person who actually talked to the plant very softly had the reverse effect of somebody who just played like heavy metal, hardcore music to it 24/7. But I think in some way it basically just proves that the vibration, whatever the vibration was in that music, kind of changed the plant to the core level and made it grow in a different way. And they've done also tests where they've looked at water, and they do say, for example, that water that is in that comes from the faucet, because it's gone through so many pipes and so many different places, it sometimes doesn't have the actual, it's kind of traumatized, if that makes sense. And because it's traumatized, it doesn't seem to be able to act the same way as if it were pure water that came from a spring, like right from the source. So sometimes that's why they say they need the water purifiers and stuff like that, where they're able to basically, when it's clear, make the water a little bit better, make it transform itself and make it have those genes that basically look more homogeneous when you look at it under a telescope. And I think that goes without saying that human beings are the same way. And we have the conscious mind, the conscious fact that we have the world that's around us, but then we also have this whole inner kind of universe within our body with the cells, the blood, and all the microbes that are living within it. And even though they might not be fully aware of our world the way that we see it, they are aware of what we are feeling, what we are holding inside, what we have inside our body. And I think that's very interesting. And I do think that the cells and all that stuff might not have the same type of consciousness that we have, but there is definitely consciousness that is to be heard. And that's where you have to kind of understand that where does the consciousness start? Does it start with us being able to remember things? Does it start with the fact that we are able to communicate stories to other people, that we are able to have affection for other people, or is it just consciousness starts with the fact that you know that you are a living being? But how can we prove that a fly or that a plant or whatever is not really real? How can we prove that they don't feel? Like in Buddhism, for example, they even think that inanimate objects have feelings. Could be a pot, could be a plate, could be a tire, could be anything you really think of. But that's almost taking it to an extreme. But in some way, if you think about it even deeper, what are we? Well, we're children of the stars. So we're kind of particles. So with the particles, we were able to create cells, and cells multiplied themselves, and they created organisms such as us, such as fish, such as many, many different things. But what do you really get out of that? Well, what do I get out of that? Is basically that we are kind of recycled beings in some ways. So at this moment we are what we are. We're humans. But once we die, we kind of go back to the earth. We get eaten up by worms, we kind of become particles again. We become part of the earth. And we disintegrate in some way. And by disintegrating, we get recycled and we become something else than what we were. So by that, what it means is that even before we were what we are now, we were something else, and that we've been recycled. And we do have some genes that are from one type of creature that was from our family, one type of gene that resembles that other person, and we stem from that. But before that, before they ate that food, before they had that to create the sperm or whatever, or even the egg in the womb of the mom, of the woman and stuff like that, there was a lot of different things that basically forced us to, well, it didn't force us, we didn't know, but it circumstances created the fact that we were able to become what we are now. And these things were a little bit out of our, it's a lot of luck, like out of our circumstances, out of the way that we think. But it's not really impossible to think that maybe particles of dust or a flower or whatever, or a piece of chicken or whatever it is, comes into contact with somebody else, let's say a human being, since we know that humans are conscious in this definition of consciousness, and that after eating it, it becomes energy for that that creature, that human, and through recycling and stuff, it might have become part of a sperm, or it might have become part of something else, and that part eventually became what we are now, us. And even at the same time, well, we get recycled anyways too, so it's just so complicated.